Hey there, brave viewers. Today, we will tell you 3 thrilling tales that all happen during a blackout. Imagine being in the dark with no lights, no TV, and only the shadows to keep you company. These stories are filled with creepy sounds, mysterious happenings, and many chills. So grab your blanket, maybe a flashlight, and get ready for goosebumps. Let's get started. But before that, let us thank you for watching Craving Fear. We need your support to continue delivering stories and improve. If you haven't, like this video and subscribe for more content. My name is Andrew, and this is my story. One stormy evening, I was home alone. My parents were out of town, leaving me in our big old house. The house had an attic and a basement, and tonight it felt even creepier because of the thunderstorm. The lights flickered for a while, and then went completely out. The entire street was plunged into darkness. I thought the blackout might be because of the storm that had been announced earlier. I decided to grab some snacks from the kitchen and found a flashlight. I wanted to read a book while waiting for the power to come back on. As I settled down, I heard faint footsteps coming from the attic. At first, I thought it might be my imagination, but the footsteps grew louder and louder, as if someone was running. My heart pounded, but I was too scared to check. Suddenly, there was a banging noise coming from the walls. It sounded like it was coming from inside the house. I felt my fear intensify. I wanted to leave the house, but when I tried to open my room door, it wouldn't budge. It felt like it was locked from the outside. Terrified, I couldn't stop shaking. In a panic, I grabbed my phone. I had avoided using it to save the battery, but now I needed answers. I quickly Googled the scary noises and found an article about strange occurrences during blackouts. As I read, I saw a warning at the end. When the banging is coming from the floor, leave the house immediately. Just then, I noticed the floor beneath me trembling, and there was a pounding sound. The realization made my blood run cold. I knew I had to get out. I rushed to the window, opened it, and without thinking, jumped out into the night. I landed safely and ran to a neighbor's house. The neighbor, Mrs. Jenkins, was surprised to see me so scared. She let me in and offered me a warm drink. I told her everything that happened, and Mrs. Jenkins listened carefully. She knew the history of our house. She explained that many years ago, the house was built on land belonging to a family who mysteriously vanished during a stormy night. The locals believed their spirits still haunted the house, especially during thunderstorms and blackouts. They said the spirits were restless because they were looking for their lost family members, and whenever there was a blackout, the spirits became active, searching every corner of the house. I stayed with Mrs. Jenkins until the power was restored. When I finally returned home, I found my parents had come back. I told them about the terrifying experience, and they listened with concern. My parents decided it was time to look into the house's history and see if they could help the restless spirits find peace. The medium, Miss Eliza, was a kind woman with a gentle demeanor. She believed the spirits were trapped because of the unresolved mystery of their disappearance. She suggested we hold a séance to try to communicate with them, understand their pain, and help them find peace. We prepared the house for the séance, lit candles, and set up a circle in the living room. The storm outside raged on, the perfect backdrop for what we were about to do. As we held hands in the circle, Miss Eliza began to chant softly, calling out to the spirits. At first, nothing happened. The house was silent except for the sound of the wind and rain. But then, the temperature dropped suddenly, and a cold breeze swept through the room. The candles flickered, and the shadows on the walls seemed to come alive. Miss Eliza continued to chant, her voice growing stronger. Suddenly the room was filled with a ghostly light, and the spirits appeared before us. They were faint, almost transparent, but their presence was undeniable. The woman I had seen in the attic was among them, her eyes now filled with sorrow instead of anger. The spirits began to speak, their voices blending into one another. They told us of the night they had disappeared. The storm had been fierce, and they had sought refuge in the house. But something had gone wrong. They had felt a dark presence, something evil that had come with the storm. It had trapped them in the house, preventing them from leaving. They had been stuck in a never-ending cycle of fear and despair, unable to find peace. Tears streamed down my face as I listened to their story. I could feel their pain, their longing to be free. Miss Eliza spoke to them gently, reassuring them that we were there to help. She performed a ritual to cleanse the house, to banish the dark presence that had trapped them. The ghostly light grew brighter as she finished the ritual, and the spirits faded. They thanked us for helping them, their voices filled with relief. The woman from the attic smiled at me, a look of gratitude in her eyes. And then, they were gone. The house felt different and lighter, as if a weight had been lifted. In the days that followed, the strange occurrences stopped. The house was finally at peace. My parents and I continued living there, but it never felt quite the same. The memory of that night and the spirit's story. Hi, my name is George. I work as a construction worker for a big company, and one day I was given a job in a large old office building. My first task was to demolish a wall in the basement. I gathered my tools and headed down. The cellar was dark and cold, with only a few lights flickering overhead. I began my work, swinging my hammer against the wall. Suddenly the lights went out completely. It was pitch dark. I could barely see my own hands. I took out my phone and used its torch to find the exit. But no matter which direction I walked, I couldn't find the door. It felt like I was walking in circles. The door I had entered through was no longer there. As I wandered, I started seeing shadows on the walls. My heart raced. I told myself it was just my imagination. But then I saw the silhouette of a child holding a rag doll in the corner of the room. Fear gripped me. I was sweating, and my hands were shaking. I cautiously approached the figure, but as I got closer, it vanished into thin air. Suddenly, I heard the sound of children laughing. It was an eerie, ghostly laughter that echoed through the dark basement. I could feel the presence of children running past me, their laughter getting louder and more sinister. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might burst out of my chest. I turned around frantically, trying to find something, anything, that could help me get out of this nightmare. The walls seemed to close in on me, and the darkness felt like it was swallowing me whole. I tried to stay calm, but the shadows kept moving, and the laughter grew. I stumbled over something and fell to the ground. As I picked myself up, I saw a faint light in the distance. I ran towards it, hoping it was the way out. But the light flickered and disappeared. I was left in complete darkness again. I could hear whispers now, like children whispering secrets. The sound was chilling, sending shivers down my spine. I tried to focus, to remember the layout of the basement, but everything seemed distorted and wrong. After what felt like an eternity, I finally found the door. I burst through it and ran up the stairs, not stopping until I was outside in the daylight. I was shaking and out of breath, my heart still racing. Later, I found out that the building used to be an orphanage many years ago. The children who lived there were mistreated. Many of them suffered, and some even died in that basement. Their spirits were restless, trapped in the darkness, and they had made themselves known to me. The horror of that day stayed with me. I couldn't forget the shadows, the laughter, and the whispers. It was a chilling reminder that some places hold onto their past, and that darkness can sometimes reach out and touch the present. I learned that the orphanage was shut down after several tragic events. The children who lived there were often mistreated, and many of them had tried to escape, only to meet with terrible fates. Some of the children were said to have been locked in the basement as punishment, and their spirits remained there, unable to move on. The basement where I had been working was where the worst of the abuse had taken place. The children's spirits were trapped in that darkness, and they had reached out to me, perhaps in a plea for help, or maybe just to let their presence be known. After a devastating hurricane hit our city, a massive blackout followed, lasting for days. I was part of the rescue team, working tirelessly to clear debris and recover people from the rubble. It was exhausting and heart-wrenching work, but we all knew it had to be done. One day we went to help out at a house that had collapsed. The owner, a lovely old lady, had been hit by a piece of wood and was taken to the hospital. Our team was tasked with seeing what was left intact of her valuables. We were trying to remove her electrical appliances and put them into storage for her to use later. As we moved through the house, we came across an old chest freezer. We decided to open it to remove the contents, thinking it might be food that could spoil. When we lifted the lid, the sight inside made my stomach turn. There, lying inside, was the dead body of an old man. He was covered in melted packs of ice cream. The blackout had caused the freezer to defrost, and the stench was unbearable. The smell of the decomposed body mixed with the melted, rotten ice cream was beyond awful. I was the one who found him. The sight of his swollen skin and open eyes was too much. I immediately felt sick, doubling over and retching. I couldn't get the image out of my head. His lifeless eyes seemed to be staring right at me, and the grotesque mix of ice cream and decay made my skin crawl. We quickly notified the police, and an investigation started. As we waited for them to arrive, I couldn't stop thinking about the old lady. She had always seemed so kind and gentle. How could she be connected to something so horrifying? The police soon discovered that the old man in the freezer was her husband. He had died of a heart attack the previous year, but she hadn't told anyone. She wanted to keep collecting his social security. It was a shocking revelation. The lady was charged with the unlawful disposal of a body, but the creepiest part was yet to come. We found out that she used to give ice cream to the kids in the neighborhood from that very freezer. The thought of those children eating ice cream from the same place where her husband's body had been hidden was beyond disturbing. The horror of that day stayed with me. I couldn't shake the image of the dead man in the freezer, nor could I forget the smell. It haunted my dreams, turning them into nightmares. I began to wonder what else the old lady had hidden away in her house. What other secrets lay buried beneath the surface of her seemingly normal life? In the following days, I learned more about the old lady's past. She had always been a bit of a recluse, living quietly with her husband. Neighbors rarely saw her, and she had no close friends. It turned out that her husband had been quite ill for a long time, and she had taken care of him. When he died, she must have panicked, not knowing what to do. Instead of calling for help, she had made a terrible decision. I tried to imagine what must have gone through her mind as she placed his body in the freezer. Did she feel remorse? Fear? Or had she become so disconnected from reality that it didn't even register as wrong? The more I thought about it, the more my mind raced with questions. Despite the horror of it all, I couldn't help but feel a twinge of sympathy for the old lady. She must have been so lonely and desperate, but that didn't excuse what she had done. The thought of those kids eating ice cream from that freezer still made me shiver. It was a chilling reminder of how little we know about the lives of those around us. The police investigation revealed even more disturbing details. The old lady had been struggling financially for years. Her husband's social security was her only source of income. When he died, she must have seen no other way to survive. It was a tragic, twisted story of desperation and loneliness. As the case ended, I found myself changed by the experience. I had seen many horrible things as a rescue worker, but nothing quite like this. It was a stark reminder that even in the most mundane settings, horror can lurk just beneath the surface. The image of the old man in the freezer would stay with me forever, a haunting symbol of the darkness that can hide in plain sight. In the end, the old lady was taken away, and her house was boarded up. The neighborhood slowly returned to normal, but the memory of what happened there lingered. People whispered about it for months,
and children no longer played near the old lady's house. I returned to my regular duties, but I was never quite the same. The horror of that day had changed me. It had shown me the depths of human desperation and the chilling reality that sometimes the most terrifying things are hidden in the places we least expect. As I continued my work, I kept the memory of that day close, a reminder of the fragility of life and the importance of compassion even in the face of horror. One night, the nightmares became too much. I woke up drenched in sweat, my heart pounding. I decided to go back to the old lady's house. I needed to confront my fears to see if there was anything else hidden in that dark, decrepit place. I grabbed my flashlight and headed out into the night. As I walked away from the old lady's house, I felt a sense of closure. The nightmares still come, but they are less frequent now. I have learned to live with the darkness, to face it head on, and in doing so, I have found a strength I never knew I had.
If you enjoyed these chilling tales, please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel for more spine-tingling stories. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.